Rewind-A-Dynamite from the post-wrestling site. AEW, lighting up the fuse. Sit back and enjoy the bubbly as we hear from John and Wai Ting. Where we're going, we don't need roads. And if the buck stops here, this thing might blow. Everything you hear are opinions of the show. And if you don't like it, go to the forums and let them know.
Welcome everybody to Rewind-A-Dynamite. It is Wai Ting here with you. John Pollock has taken a much needed break. I mean, those of you who might have heard him on Monday or throughout the week know that he's battling a bit of a mystery illness right now, so he's just kind of resting his voice. He was very active on the website today, so if you want to check out his daily news update and keep up with his thoughts on everything that's been going on, do check that out. But joining us, Bruce Lord. Bruce Lord, welcome to Rewind-A-Dynamite.
Oh, thanks very much, Wai. It's nice to be back here. It occurred to me that, we've seen a lot of replacements in wrestling over the last little while. We just saw Dustin fill in for Cody and even Serpentico filling in for Mark Quinn on Dark. But I think in my case, me filling in for John feels more like Val Venus filling in for Eddie Guerrero back in 2000. So huge drop in work rate. But unlike Val, there will not be any QAnon BS coming from my corner. So don't worry about that.
Okay, maybe some towels. Maybe that's we can't see beneath the Zoom, so I can only assume you are dressed like Val Venus. But welcome, of course, Bruce Lord. We love having you on these shows. We know you're incredibly well versed in the world of professional wrestling, and in particular AEW, as a fan of not just Dynamite, Rampage, but all the other dark shows as well. So really pleased to have you on, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts on tonight's show. But before we get there, I do want to throw some plugs out for all the shows that we've got on the website right now. Of course, today on our post-daily news update, I had the chance to talk to both Andrew Thompson and Brandon Thurston of WrestleNomics, getting the entire team together because we need an entire village to make up for one John Pollock. But it was great to get Brandon and Andrew's takes on the MLW versus WWE lawsuit. Brandon doing some tremendous summarizing of the entire story for us. So I do encourage everybody to check that out at youtube.com/postwrestling, or if you're a cafe patron, directly in your post wrestling feed. Tomorrow at 1 o'clock in our usual daily update spot, in its place, we have a pre-recorded show from John Pollock. So you're going to get your John fix, as he will be joined by Ariel Helwani for the annual MMA prediction show. So they're going to go through all of their predictions from the past year, and we're going to see how Ariel did this year, along with, of course, our brand new predictions for this upcoming year. Tomorrow night on the YouTube at 8 p.m. Eastern, it is the Worst of 2021 show. And that will be, of course, the complete antithesis of what we did last week. It'll be me, John, Braden, and Davey talking about the very worst that 2021 had to offer. And if you're listening to it, you can look for that on Friday morning. We, of course, have the British Wrestling Experience coming back with the show tomorrow night as well. On Friday, I want to give a special shout out to the Up Next feed, because I'll be joining the BDE to review the Lego Batman movie. So that'll be free for everybody, so look up for that. And then on the weekend, we have the Long and Winding Royal Road on Saturday with WH Park. And then on the Post Wrestling Cafe feed, free for everybody, is our very next edition of Postmarks. And how appropriate, Bruce, that we have you on, because you happen to be one of the co-hosts of Postmarks along with David, of course. Can you tell us a bit about this month's edition?
Yeah, that's right. This month, myself and David are going to be chatting with none other than MJ from NJ, somebody who has obviously been a major presence within the post community since it began and since before then and whatnot. I think it's kind of serendipitous that there has been so much talk about WWE from the business side of things in the last couple of weeks, in the last month or so. We recorded this episode, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 weeks ago, something like that. So we're not entirely up to date with everything, but I feel like, MJ, because of his background in business, which he talks about with David and myself, he's somebody who can offer a really unique perspective on a lot of the issues that I think fans such as myself find interesting about the larger wrestling business, but we just lack the actual business acumen or terminology and whatnot that people like himself or Brandon Thurston do. So we had a lot of fun talking with MJ, and looking forward to finding out what everybody thinks of the show when it comes out.
One of the most beloved members of the Post Wrestling and Up Next community is MJ from NJ, and it's a great response to the first 2 editions of Postmarks that have come out. And of course, that is a monthly show available for free for free on the Post Wrestling Cafe feed. So you can go to patreon.com/postwrestling and find the link there Saturday evening for it, or just simply subscribe and get it right to your devices. All right, with all that down, let's go to tonight's edition of AEW Dynamite. This comes to us from Raleigh, North Carolina. And we start the show off with Adam Cole, Bobby Fish, Kyle O'Reilly coming to the ring. Adam Cole reminds us that he's never been pinned, submitted. He is undefeated in singles competition. And then he reintroduces the audience to Bobby Fish and Kyle O'Reilly. He says it's a new era in AEW. And out come Matt, Nick, and Brandon Cutler. Matt says he kicked COVID's ass in 2 days. And he apologizes for getting involved in the 6-man a few weeks ago with Red Dragon and Adam Cole. He is here to remind Red Dragon, and he does refer to them as Red Dragon, that their resolution is to go after the tag team titles. Red Dragon says that's funny because that's their resolution as well. Cole attempts to play peacemaker between the two. He says this friendly competition is what makes them the best faction, unlike the best friends. And cue the best friends, because they come out. There's not much talking as they stand off, and then we just escalate into a brawl. Adam Cole hits Orange Cassidy with a low blow. Out comes Chris Statlander as she stands up to Adam Cole. But then here comes Britt Baker. She attacks Statlander from behind, curb stomps her, which leads, and then she even proceeds to hold Orange Cassidy's head for Cole to super kick before Cole hits him with the boom. So at this point, the Bucks are about to do their kiss to Adam Cole as Britt steps in the way and gives her man the smooch instead. So they have officially paired on screen Britt Baker and Adam Cole. What do you think of the opening segment, Bruce?
Yeah, it's canon now. It was a rare, non-matched start to an episode of Dynamite, and one that had a hell of a lot of moving parts. At one point, JR said, the ring's getting packed, and he wasn't fooling. And as it turned out, that would really kind of be setting the stage for kind of this whole episode of Dynamite. Obviously, the tension between Red Dragon and the Bucks is, that's a classic feud that everybody is just salivating over. They've got the Red Dragon tease and everything. Cole being in the tricky position there. I like the fact it was a subtle thing. I like the fact that the Bucks came out specifically when Cole called them the baddest team, and the Bucks are taking this personally, like, no, this is our territory. We run this. So I like that. Obviously, the best friends are sort of just there to keep them focused on a shared opponent or a shared enemy right now. Personally, I'm a little bit burnt out on all of the Cole and Cassidy stuff right now. I would like to see Cole moving on to something else. But that said, if this is going to give us, as it seems to be, gives us Britt versus Statlander, I'm very, very into that.
Yeah, I mean, we do have a, what is it now, 5-on-5 situation between the best friends and the super elite, and it almost makes perfect sense to do something like that. Almost makes you wonder if we'll get the 10-man tag at some point, or if they can build to a bigger stipulation. Like they do have War Games, they do have Stadium Stampede. Those are pretty much far down the line, but those options are there. And I think for a little bit longer, if they could drag out this big elite group of both, the former Undisputed Era along with the Bucks, I think it'll make for some really compelling matches against the best friends. I'm also really looking forward to Statlander versus Baker. And this leads to next week, the official mixed match tag here. We have between Statlander and Orange Cassidy versus Britt Baker and Adam Cole, which is a very rare mixed tag. I'm trying to think about the last time they might have done one of these.
There was one on the Jericho Cruise with Riho and Kenny. I feel as though there might have been one other one that was maybe on Dark rather than Dynamite. But it is something, I know it was something that, if I'm remembering correctly, Tony talked a little bit about like, oh no, we'd be totally open to doing that or having intergender matches or whatever it might be, but that they have shied away from since. Oh, and of course, the Shaq and Jade match as well. That's correct. The other one. That's the big one. Yes,
absolutely. Yeah, and then the other one was Riho and Kenny versus Penelope and Kip Sabian from the cruise that aired on Dark. So, it remains to be seen if this will be like WWE mixed tag rules. I can't imagine, the men will be getting too involved with the women here, but in terms of story, it absolutely fits. I think, just seemingly bolsters Adam Cole's surroundings and his depth in AEW by surrounding him with, two of the top tag teams and now the top female in the company by his side as well. So I'm loving the super elite, and I think Adam Cole continues to really increase his presence, and I think it adds a little bit to Britt Baker as well by having her now being paired with the top heel group as well. We get a little video about Wardlow, which leads us into CM Punk versus Wardlow. This is Punk's 10th match overall in AEW and his 4th singles match on Dynamite. Wardlow is doing a lot of classic, slower monster stuff early on, some hard Irish whips, start him first into the corner from Punk, and then Punk is having a lot of trouble getting Wardlow off of his feet. Wardlow eventually catches Punk's knee in the corner and hits a couple of power bombs, and then a third, and then a fourth, and then a fifth power bomb. Wardlow is about to pin Punk by standing on his chest, but MJF gets on the apron, gets him to stop the count, and tells Wardlow he wants more. So then we get a 6th powerbomb, and then a 7th powerbomb. MJF at this point is just riling the crowd up. He directs Wardlow to powerbomb Punk through the announce table, or through the timekeeper's table. And then Wardlow does just that, so we get an 8th powerbomb through the table. There's a long 10 count tease, but CM Punk ultimately makes it back. MJF tells him to powerbomb Punk again, and as Wardlow picks him up, Punk small packages him for the victory as he just proceeds to quickly roll outside of the ring and collapses. So I wouldn't say there was much of a match here. This was more of an angle, but I thought it was overall simple and effective. What did you think, Bruce?
It was. I mean, you're exactly right. Going into this, we knew how this was going to play out, right? That this is a vehicle for furthering the tension between Wardlow and MJF, and that's the real story here. That's the real feud that we're moving towards. Given that, I did find that it went a little bit long and started a little bit slow. Obviously, given the styles of the people involved and the story, it necessitated Wardlow kind of grinding away at Punk for a good long while. So, I understood that. I mean, this has to be Wardlow's highest profile match, I think, since that Cody Cage match. And given, Punk's stature in the company, it's arguably a bigger match than that, and his biggest one, even though it wasn't for a title. Obviously they were in an interesting spot here, and that Wardlow is beginning to generate a lot of sympathy from the crowd, not just because of the harassment and abuse he's suffering from MJF, but just, because powerbombing dudes dozens of times is cool, and we like seeing that. So they were in a bit of a position where, okay, we can't really have the crowd cheering for him to repeatedly powerbomb the most popular wrestler on the roster. So you had to sort of kind of use some smoke and mirrors and 3-card Monty and whatnot to put the focus back over to MJF, which absolutely makes sense there. I also like the fact, and this is a tactic that they've used a lot in AEW, is that you have the leader or head of a heel stable often sort of asking their underlings to just go out there and damage my opponent or my nemesis or the guy I'm going to be facing in a week. I don't care if you win or if you lose, just hurt him, just cripple him or her. And, the idea that wins don't even really matter. Obviously, that wasn't going to be the case here, as MJF getting indignant in Wardlow's face was necessary to drive the friction between them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For a pro wrestling angle and on a show that I think is more geared towards the type of wrestling fan that has kind of seen every single wrestling angle under the sun, this wasn't going to surprise anybody. I would say in execution, it almost came across as a little too predictable and contrived. But I also sometimes give them credit for not trying to have, outswerve us for the sake of doing so. Oftentimes, the most direct solution, the most predictable solution is the right way of telling your story. And I kind of felt that way here. It's interesting to also note that they're not losing sight at all about what CM Punk is here for. He's here, of course, to bolster the entire company. But, when you have him face up against a guy who's a major top prospect like a Wardlow, ultimately his job is to make a guy like that look strong. And I thought they made Wardlow look plenty strong here in defeat. So all the pieces are in the right place. Punk gets a win towards his bout with MJF. Wardlow has a little more reason to turn on MJF in the future. And the segment kind of ends that way. The crowd is very much pro Wardlow as he leaves the ring, and MJF is pissed off. So I thought we would have maybe a bit more kind of concrete, I would say myself, or at least it seemed like the people in the audience tonight felt like tonight might have been the day that we actually got the turn. And they're going to make us wait for it, which I think is perfectly fine.
I think calling back to Spears being the person who, as his accountability buddy, and trust me, I've seen a lot of Spears and Wardlow on dark matches over the past couple of months. That sort of makes sense because it's just one other irritant, one other speed bump that MJF can sort of lob in Wardlow's path to just stave off the inevitable for a little bit longer, right? And having that irritation, having the crowd, just angry at MJF or at Wardlow, maybe even, for not reaching the breaking point, that's heat. They're building towards it, right? And we saw MJF go back to that again in his segment later on in the match, again promising it and pulling it away.
I also wanted to shout out the chat room. Thank you very much, Raymond, for bringing up another mixed tag that we forgot to mention. And that was Chris Statlander and Orange Cassidy versus the Hardy Family Office, the Bunny and the Blade from Road Rager in last year. So there was that as well. Our next match is Dante Martin versus Powerhouse Hobbs. And this match starts off with Martin just swarming Hobbs with a lot of high flying. Hobbs eventually catches him and hits a big spine buster on the floor to kill Martin's momentum. And then Hobbs just proceeds to destroy Martin. We come back from commercial. We get a bit of a comeback from Dante. Big missile drop kick. Springboard tornado on the floor. Ricky Starks is about to interfere. But out comes Jay Lethal to stop him, to negate the advantage. Dante Martin then hits his nosedive and gets the win on Powerhouse Hobbs. It felt to me, Bruce, very similar to the template of match that we just had with Punk and Wardlow. But, this one obviously with a bit more varied offense and a bit less heat, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. It did sort of occur to me that, here we have, just two absolute beasts just slowly, methodically grinding away at much smaller opponents, whom, in a theoretically, equal contest, they should be able to handily defeat, but, it isn't to be in both of these cases. I've been enjoying overall where this whole feud between Dante and his various pals and Team Taz has been going. There's been some stuff that has been a little bit kind of slow and erratic and they didn't quite hit the beats right. But I'm really high on both of these guys, Hobbs especially. I think, we've seen a lot from Dante in terms of being able to get over as a single star. That said, I feel as though I would like to see Hobbs come out on top. Ultimately in this, if we ever get a proper blow off or whatever it might be, if only because I think there's a hell of a singles run in Hobbs as a face, and we can always have Dante pair back up with Darius later on down the line whenever he's cleared to go as well.
Yeah, the idea of like when Powerhouse Hobbs will, I would say he's still very much like in sort of a supporting act role. Anytime Team Taz sort of like is facing off with a babyface and they need a major win over somebody, or if it's CM Punk, like needing a win on an undercard guy, it's a guy like Powerhouse Hobbs. So I'm certainly left wondering, okay, when are we going to get out of the starting blocks with this guy and actually go for it with a push for him? And maybe they deem that he's not ready yet. Maybe they deem that, hey, Starks is that guy right now, and we kind of have to. And maybe Hook now is even in line in front of Powerhouse Hobbs and Team Taz, but. The man I think has shown a lot of comfort. I've loved his cockiness every time we get to see him perform. And if they wanted to do it tomorrow, I think they could.
Yeah.
I'm not very hot on this, Dante Martin Team Taz thing. I think it's just been going on for a bit long without too much movement. I don't know the status of Leo Rush right now. He seems to have disappeared.
There's Leo, there's Matt. So we now have Leo, Matt Sydal, and now Jay Lethal as kind of seconds or pals or partners for Dante, completely separate from his actual brother tag team partner who is still on the shelf. And it all just seems a little bit, just a lot of hot swapping happening there. And I kind of feel like, obviously Dante is young. We know that, cutting fiery promos isn't necessarily his strong suit, not to say that he won't ever get there or anything, but he sort of just feels as though he's sort of, like a little bit like a deer in the headlights while there are all of these, kind of louder and larger personalities. Again, when you have people like Leo Rush and, Ricky Starks and Jay Lethal, right? Like people who really have that immediate charisma. I kind of feel like leaving Dante out there this much is maybe sort of kind of leaving him looking a little bit bewildered.
What are we ultimately ending up towards here between this Dante Martin Team Taz feud? What match are we looking at?
I mean, that's a question. Like like maybe Dante versus Starks, possibly. Like the fact that, as you're saying, they haven't really ever pulled the trigger on any of the members of Team Taz being major presences, or at least elevated into kind of main event status, means that I don't really know. Even if you are going to go with Dante, I don't know how much he gains, because he has already. He's beaten Hobbs here, and it didn't really feel like much of a elevation or whatever it might be. So I don't know, unless again we have these other moving parts now, like Jay Lethal and Leo Rush involved. It's tough to sort of see what the ultimate blow off or destination for this is. And again, things could maybe get more complex or clearer if and when Darius returns.
And is Hook at all a part of this?
I would, to be honest, Hook is such a phenomenon right now. I would kind of keep him clear of this. You can just have Hook continuing to murder dudes on Rampage and building up viral fame accidentally, on Twitter. I'm sorry. I know you guys talked about it already on the news update this morning, but my God,
we've all seen the video.
Oh, yes, amazing.
All right. Well, up next we got the Inner Circle backstage. They're cutting a promo as Eddie Kingston walks into the frame. He says he's going to be ringside tonight because he wants revenge on Daniel Garcia for attacking his knee. Eddie reiterates to Proud and Powerful what he wrote on Twitter, or I think what he said on an interview, I should say. That Jericho is the reason why they are not the tag team champions. Jericho says this is the big leagues. He doesn't care what happened in the streets of New York between them. Ortiz and Santana just refuse to be involved. They just want these two to get clear with whatever beef that they have with each other, and they're just going to step out of it. So Eddie and Jericho continue to just get into each other's face. Jericho tells Eddie that you can be ringside for Sammy's match, but if you get involved, I'm gonna attack you. I'm gonna beat you up, is what he basically says.
Did you notice Jericho's unfortunate Freudian slip there with "we promise to take over this country," which just couldn't help but remind me of some of his wife's activities.
Wait. We promise to take over this country. Well,
he said that. I mean, promise to take over this company, or promise to. But he said take over this country first, which was like, that's unfortunate. Okay. Just this close to January 6th. But hey,
promise to take over this country. Interesting. Maybe it wasn't a slip at all. He does say at the end of this promo, GFY, which I feel like would be pretty self-explanatory. You thought about it. Okay, we got an MJF. Yeah, is GFY gonna be a chant, you think?
I don't know if I'm gonna see that one getting over. But maybe. I do like Eddie here in this kind of just constantly irritated role. Even when people are theoretically there to assist him or assist his friends, he's never happy about it. He's just ornery. He wakes up on the wrong side of the bed every morning. And we know, right, that is something that kind of dogs Eddie Kingston's own real life, right? It's what he was writing about in the Players Tribune piece. Just even when I have a good match, I'm pissed about it and I don't think I've done well enough with it. Having a little bit of that just anger and neurosis in his on-screen character is great for me.
MJF then comes out. He's pissed off about the Wardlow thing. He comes out screaming very passionately. He says Punk got a fluke victory over an oaf tonight. And he's going to make sure Punk takes his first L in AEW next week. And he's going to give him the match that he's been looking for. The match that everybody has been looking for. CM Punk versus Shawn Spears next week.
So that's a classic in the making, years in the making, right? As soon as Punk jumped over, just dream opponents had to have the chairman on that list there.
from the get-go of him like storming out here just like all flustered and like him like building up to this like big reveal. I thought MJF was great here. He was great when like he did the Wardlow reveal, and then now like an even less spectacular match like in Sean Spears. I thought it was very funny.
Even when he's legitimately mad at both Punk and Wardlow, he can't help but just troll the audience, because that's just what he was put on this earth to do. So
Absolutely.
Great stuff.
The Super Elite are backstage as Adam Cole brings in Britt Baker. This is where they challenge Statlander and Orange Cassidy to the mixed tag next week. And they call him Brandon Butler this time. Hangman Page walks out. He talks about spending 90 minutes in the ring with Bryan Danielson, and the title is still around his waist. Records have been reset, and he now needs a new challenger. So out comes Dan Lambert. Lambert is actually here to put Page over. He commends him for not taking shortcuts to the championship like Cody did. Lambert says that Page has earned everything in his career, everything with the exception of his cowboy persona. He tells him to stop disrespecting the cowboy legacies of people like Dick Murdoch, Stan Hansen, and Bill Watts, and then even says that Page is full of cowboy shit. Page challenges Dan Lambert to a fight to just find out how much of a cowboy he is, and Lambert says, no thanks, I'm about to leave. But then out comes Lance Archer, making a return, I feel. Like, when was the last time we saw him?
When he took that horrific concussion injury in the botched moonsault from Kingston about, I think it was end of October. It was interesting because he showed up technically on New Japan Strong about a month later in a tag with Suzuki against Kingston and Moxley. But that match had been recorded like 5 weeks previous to that airing. So this is the first time he's been back since that really, really scary looking moonsault spot. So I got really excited about this.
They're putting him right to work. I mean, I would say last time we saw him, he felt like he was a babyface, was he not?
He always kind of walks the line. He's throwing guys from backstage out ahead of him when he comes out on Dark. I think he was he was fighting Kingston, so I can't quite remember. But he's,
okay.
He's big. He's a monster. It's easy enough to reset him either way.
He can be both either way. But, here he comes out attacking, looking like he's about to attack Lambert. But then I don't know if you took this the same way I did, but like it was almost at Lambert's encouraging that like, hey, don't attack me. You're in the ring here with the champion. Take your opportunity. And then that's what seemed to change Archer's mind as he attacks Page instead. Or do you think Archer came out with the intent to attack Page the whole time?
I mean, the fact that he isn't coming out there with Jake is, I mean, maybe, it's a run-in, so, Jake's not going to be able to make his way down the ramp as fast as Archer did. So they could be pointing towards something with Lambert there. The fact that Lambert sort of also acknowledged the fact that, Archer beat me up, a few months ago back when he was in there. And that I just like the idea that like Lambert was smart enough to have like clear logical reasons as to why you shouldn't kick my ass, you should kick this other guy's ass. Like just the fact that like Lambert, yes, he's fantastic at riling up the crowd, but there's always just enough of a little kernel of truth, enough of a fly in the ointment to make you go, he's not entirely wrong about anything that he's saying there, right? And I thought he did a really good job in complimenting Page in a pretty straightforward, incredible way before beginning to kind of chip away at his persona there. So, I mean, whether Lambert is involved or not, I think this is a really, really great next opponent for Page. If Page is going to be the first sort of, entirely homegrown, more or less 80% homegrown, let's say, AEW champion who isn't, getting a title based on, earlier work and an existing reputation, if he is the kind of the from the ground up champion, you want him to have a series of title defenses and title matches against a real range of opponents, right? And it doesn't get any more further away from a Bryan Danielson match than a Lance Archer match does. So I'm really excited about this.
Yeah. In terms of styles, I mean, I think Archer is a perfect, follow-up opponent for Page to, for a first title defense to be against Bryan Danielson, that's a lot, like a series, a 90-minute war with or a 60-minute plus a 30-minute war with Bryan Danielson. So I think we're at the point now where we need to give Page some strong wins, and I think Archer is perfect for it. He's big, he looks mean. He'll be able to tell a strong underdog story with an opponent like that. So where do you think this match will occur?
I mean, we might be able to get to it by Revolution. I think we're what? How many weeks away from Revolution are we?
Yeah, I'm thinking we definitely get this before Revolution. Revolution is probably not till it looks like here. Well, sometime I believe it's is it
March 6th.
March 6th?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might be a bit of a push. Yeah.
Yeah, we do have that beach break show coming up, and who knows? Like maybe they'll decide to do it on a random edition of Dynamite. But yeah, so that is seems to be the next challenger for Adam Page's championship. In the back we go with Arn Anderson. He is with his son Brock and Lee Johnson of the Nightmare Family, and he says he can smell it. He can smell it here. It is Horseman country. And out comes Tully Blanchard, who agrees. Yeah, you can really smell it here. It smells like Horseman country. FTR follows, of course. Tully tells Arn to leave his son and Lee Johnson and go join them. FTR says that we're more of your sons than Brock Anderson can ever be. So they challenge Brock Anderson and Lee Johnson to a match next week for the right to be Arn Anderson's son.
Yeah, I mean, physically, obviously, Brock, is just has everybody beat because it's a eerie resemblance between him and his father. But yeah, I like this. I mean, obviously having, Arn and Tully face off against each other is that's perennial. You can go back to that whenever you want. But yeah, Dax's line about like, if you really want to impress the man who wishes I was his son was just, that's just some good knife twisting there. I have to say, I really am still quite high, specifically on Lee Johnson. His and Brock's matches on Dark have been relatively short, and we haven't seen a whole hell of a lot from Brock. But the odd time when we have seen Lee get a little bit more time, whether it's in tags or in singles matches, there's a hell of a lot of upside there. So a little bit of a higher profile match for him is welcome in my book.
Is this going to be just an FTR win? Are we leading to anything more with Brock and Lee Johnson in terms of story, you think?
I mean, you could have, like I said, they've been pairing together for a while. We have this, as of right now, relatively stable unit in the larger Nightmare family that hasn't really, apart from, Cody's tweenerness, really been shifted up or changed too much. I don't think there would be anything especially wrong about having either Johnson or Brock break away. Like I said, there's loads of upside for Johnson, either as a heel or as a face, and God knows there's plenty of stables for him to join. And at some point down the road, having Brock sort of, break his father's heart, and turn to the dark side and move away from strong fundamentals and spine busters and things like that, there could be something there as well. So yeah, I think you need to, you can have a competitive match, but I think FTR has to take it. Yeah.
We see a little video about Jade Cargill's TBS title win last week as we lead into Hikaru Shida versus Serena Deeb. This is the fourth meeting between these two. And it starts off with Shida walking down the ramp and Deeb attacking her from behind with a kendo stick, specifically the knee. And the rest of the match is exactly what you would expect here. Shida reluctantly, bravely, I should say, or stupidly, maybe, agrees to start the match despite the knee injury, and the rest is all Deeb beating her up, focusing on this knee, slaps Shida into the Serenity Lock, and the referee stops the match. And, this is their way, of course, and we just reviewed, by the way, everybody, Rewind-A-Way, because Stone Cold said so. Bruce, did you ever watch this VHS tape?
I think I might have at a friend's house. He might have been able to get his mitts on the VHS in 96 or 97 or something like that. Okay. Little bits and pieces of it, as you guys were talking about. I haven't listened to the entire episode, but I listened to most of it today, and little bits and pieces of it sounded vaguely familiar to me. Remember, there was also that great bit of him talking with, I'm sorry, my mind's blanking, the music composer. There was a whole extended... of him kind of like upbraiding Jim Johnson for saying, well, yeah, you wrote my music, but you didn't actually do too much with it. I do like the whole like Stone Cold kind of in a meta way talking about his own character and everything.
Yeah, I don't particularly remember that section of it, but I'll take your word for it. I mean, the rest of the VHS is very much like that. It's just like Stone Cold Steve Austin in the midst of like his 97 completely anti-hero run just like talking shit about everybody and narrating the highlights of his first year of the Stone Cold character. So it was very entertaining. I encourage everybody to go and check that out. But I bring that up because there's a specific focus on that VHS on WrestleMania 13, which might be the most famous referee stoppage of all. Of a man stuck in a submission hold and refusing to tap out, and then having the ref ultimately stop it. And that's the attempt that I think they gave here to Hikaru Shida to protect her. She did not tap out. She is pissed off that the ref stopped it afterwards. But here comes Serena Deeb continuing to attack with the kendo stick as this feud continues, Bruce, into a fifth match. What do you think?
I figured that we were going to be going to a rubber match, a fifth match, when this one was announced. I didn't expect it to be definitive. I thought we'd maybe get a little bit of more actual in-ring competitive action before this one went to an inconclusive finish. But I mean, I like the way that this story and feud has been spun out and built. It started as both women blaming the other for costing them a title opportunity. But over the past few months, that whole originating incident has been kind of, that's just kind of lost to the sands of time. These two women just hate each other, want to cripple each other, are willing to do anything in order to get a modicum of revenge. I like the fact that it just does feel like a blood feud, like something that doesn't have anything to do with the title, feels entirely personal. I thought the deep promo or sit down with JR at the end last week or whenever that was really good. Deep sort of saying, I did exactly what I said I was going to do, as the refs are admonishing her and, asking her how she could do something so horrible. I thought all of that worked out really well. So yeah, obviously disappointing in the short term, I suppose. And you could hear a little bit of smattering of boos from the crowd over the stoppage. But, I think really the only question now is, what sort of stipulation are we going to see for the big blow off? Like last woman standing, cage match? I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to ask you that because I'll be honest, I wasn't too excited when I saw that this match was happening for a fourth time. Typically, AEW doesn't do a whole lot of rematches. And for a series to go to a fourth match in a relatively short amount of time, I thought was a bit peculiar. Of course, they use the fourth match to set up an angle for a big fifth match. And I would have to think, to make it different, they are going to do some sort of stipulation. Could it be a submission? Did they do submission? No,
I
right?
can't remember now. I don't think so. One of them was either a no DQ. I think one of them was no DQ, but I don't think it was submission. I could be wrong.
Yeah. I mean, just something to kind of vary it up a little, and to give this feud some finality.
Yeah.
I think is in store. So they're building to. I mean, these two have great chemistry, and if it means we get one more of it, and perhaps even hopefully the best one with an interesting story attached, then I'll be for it for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The Jurassic Express and Christian are in the back, and Christian, takes the opportunity to wish Rey Fenix well. They need new challengers, and they open the opportunity for any tag team in the top 5 to come and get their title shot. So then here comes Silver and Reynolds, and we get a title match on Rampage this week. Simple as that.
Yep, fair enough. It's always fun to see Silver's actual in-ring, regardless of what people have differing opinions about the whole Johnny Hundy persona. But his in-ring is always enjoyable, and it gives Jurassic Express, just something to sort of keep themselves occupied. I know obviously there's a lot of talk about what the finish of the match or last week would have been had there not been the injury, and would we be going to a rewind with the Lucha Brothers? Who knows? But this is perfectly fine right now as a kind of a placeholder feud.
Speaking of the Lucha Brothers, we have Matt Hardy versus Penta up next on this show. This was not one of the matches that they announced beforehand, from what I recall. But we are in North Carolina, Raleigh, North Carolina, to be specific, and Matt Hardy's family is ringside here. Rebby, along with the kids. Hardy says that he's going to put Penta in the hospital next to his brother. So they start the match off, and we do a Cero Miedo standoff with the delete chant. Hardy controls throughout a commercial break. Penta then comes back with a double stomp in the corner for 2. Penta then takes a side effect on the apron. Matt then hits a big moonsault press, which we rarely see, I feel, these days from Matt Hardy. But Penta evades it. Penta then capitalizes on this and hits the Fear Factor for the win. What do you think of the match, Bruce?
Not much, to be honest. I think, like a lot of people, I'm feeling pretty burnt out on Matt Hardy. Initially, when the whole Hardy family office stable started, I was sort of thinking, okay, well, if this is more about Matt Hardy being put in a position to elevate people like Private Party, that's fine. But there hasn't really been much of that. We got a little tease that might be happening a little bit later on in today's episode. But yeah, I just sort of feel like we've seen, Matt can still, wrestle a match, but it's not as though it's, the real sort of lights out style that you associate with him. And as a partner for somebody like Penta, who has, when he's, in there under the right circumstances, has such an intense, such a brutal, but also charismatic sort of style. This one just kind of fell flat for me, I have to say.
I agree. I thought the match was pretty average, certainly by AEW standards. It felt like something for the hometown crowd, just to kind of give that, Matt Hardy singles spotlight. It was a chance for Matt Hardy to wrestle in front of his family, but I think in his on-screen appearances, it is starting to feel further and further that he, like the thing is, I don't even want to say that he's like not necessarily of like the AEW standard, because we see Sting and they do plenty with Sting. There's a spot for Matt Hardy on the show, I'm sure, but whatever it is, it doesn't seem to be as part of this Hardy family office.
I'd be interested to know, and just if you could want to prorate it or adjust it, his in-ring time versus Christian's in-ring time. And I'm not saying that because they've kind of kicked the tires on that feud, and I don't need to go back to that necessarily. But, when you have Christian in there, it's very clear that, okay, look, this is somebody who is really, really, helping, I think, a lot of the younger talent get experience in a certain sort of pace and style of match that maybe they haven't been accustomed to, working on smaller independents in, more quote indie style sorts of matches. And there's a real tremendous value, I think, in someone like Christian sort of leveling up and smartening up some of the younger talent in terms of in-ring work there. But I mean, I feel as though we've seen Hardy, maybe 50% more than Christian. And yeah, just, a lot of walk and brawl, a lot of, nothing really exciting.
We get into perhaps the most newsworthy event coming out of this show as Penta with Alex Abrahantes sends a message to Malakai Black. The lights go out and Malakai Black shows up. Alex and Penta are immediately taken out with kicks as Malakai starts ripping off Penta's mask. Out come the Varsity Blondes. They're all attacking Black. But then little young Julia Hart comes up onto the apron and tells them to stop. Black starts laughing. He starts to count the bodies in the ring. 1, 2, 3. This crowd is already chanting for it. As the lights go out again, they come back on, and there is Brody King. He takes out all 3 of the male members that are in the group in the ring. The Excalibur identifies him as a former Ring of Honor Tag Team Champion, and he and Black stand tall as they leave the ring. What did you think of Brody King's debut?
I mean, it was exactly the sort of just, total destruction of anybody and everybody who happened to be in the ring that you would expect somebody with the physical presence of Brody King to have. I'm okay with the name that Excalibur was giving them there, the Kings of the Black Throne. Sure, that's fine. Sounds like, one of the black and death metal bands that, we know that Malakai Black is into. So yeah,
it's no Knights of the Nephilim. Or whatever.
Heels of the Nephilim.
Heels of the Nephilim.
Yes. Yeah. But hey, it's in the same ballpark there. I was really wondering, again, to kind of go back to the question about the Lucha Brothers, the tag matches, and Phoenix's injury. I was really wondering if the plan was, to have Black and King specifically attack Phoenix and Penta. But, given the injury, we sort of have to do a bit of a rewind with the Varsity Blondes, which is fine. That's perfectly okay. Brody King is just going to massacre those 2 pretty boys, and that's fine. I do have to say I'm a little bit concerned about Julia kind of wanting to kind of beg off or asking them to stop attacking Malakai. I really, really, really hope we are not going into some sort of hypnosis. She has fallen under the Svengali-like spell of Malakai Black. Oh, the mist has corrupted her sweet innocence. So I really, really, really don't need that. We just had the return of that on Raw this Monday, and no, thank you.
I would be curious to see like how an AEW would handle a similar type of character. It would be quite the visual dynamic of seeing, these two giant tattooed men and then Julia Hart as like a valet of theirs. And I mean ultimately I don't know like what they intend on Julia Hart's future being in the company. Do they want to keep her as a valet, or I imagine they would ultimately want to make her an in-ring competitor?
She's been working matches on Raw, or excuse me, on Dark, excuse me.
And is this a vehicle to get her, more of a singles character, just that'll make her special, perhaps? I'm willing to at least give it a chance if that is indeed the direction. But I mean, I thought we were gonna go with the House of Black. What happened to that name?
I mean, they said the newest member of the House of Black. So I don't know, maybe the Kings of the Black Throne are just the tag team within the larger house. I don't know. Again, Malakai Black seems like the sort of dude who's given a lot of thought to the larger mythos and world that he's sort of building up around him. And obviously in the kind of the post departure interviews, we got a little bit of a taste of what that might have looked like in the WWE. I mean, hell, even the T-shirt, the most recent House of Black T-shirt that has the house rules on the back seems like, kind of like flavor text or lore for, some Dark Souls video game or RPG or something like that.
Up next, we've got in the back, we've got Layla Hirsch, Red Velvet, and Chris Statlander. They're being interviewed. Statlander is asked about the Britt Baker mixed tag challenge, which she, of course, accepts. And Layla Hirsch takes offense to this. She says, "It's kind of selfish of you to take a match when we have a 6-man tag on Friday." So Layla Hirsch and Chris Statlander bicker a bit back and forth, and we have to find out on Friday, can these tag partners get along?
Hirsch actually said Saturday, which confused me. I was like, oh, geez, has Rampage been preempted for Saturday? I don't think it has. Yeah, I don't think so.
It depends on the time zone, I suppose.
Yeah, this is something that's been percolating over on Dark. The idea that Hirsch is starting to get a little bit kind of like, cocky, big for her britches, wants, kind of selfish pins in exactly the same way that, somebody like Spears has been over Wardlow. So it's, pointing towards theoretically a full heel turn for
her. We have next the Acclaim taking on Bear Country. Max Caster comes out. He calls out Darby and Sting in his raps. I didn't think there were any notable lines of his that were memorable enough. Did you, Bruce?
There was the Novak Djokovic, line about, you get no shots like Novak Djokovic. I was expecting a Kodak Black reference. I'm going to be honest. I feel like, that man gave us, a hell of a lot yesterday. And I'm kind of surprised.
Please update us. I'm not aware what happened.
Oh, you have? Oh boy. I mean, I'm not up on all of the, the modern hip hop that the young kids are into anymore. That ship has long since sailed for me. But apparently Mr. Black is a rapper of some repute, and was at I can't remember which NHL team it was. I'm not sure. But point being, he was in the VIP box. He was very prominently displayed on the camera. And then, I don't know, maybe the hockey game just wasn't entirely entertaining. And so he and a female companion decided to engage in some non-hockey related activities in full view of an entire hockey stadium.
Holy shit! I just
there you go.
At it right now. There we go. I thought the hook video was going to be the most scandalous thing I was going to see today, but goddamn, okay, not safe for work warning, everybody. If you're going to Google Kodak Black NHL. But,
Carolina Panthers, Danny says in the chat. Thank you very much, Danny.
Okay, yeah. I haven't been to a hockey game in quite a while, so I don't know how entertaining they are these days, but okay, very interesting. Caster gets the win with the mic drop. I'm sorry, I missed most of this match because I had a hell of a time trying to catch up on my notes. So how is this, Bruce, if you caught it?
It was pretty good. A lot of it happened in picture-in-picture as well. I'm a big fan of both of these teams' actual in-ring work, especially Bowens. I think that Bowens is really one of the more underrated and very solid and versatile in-ring workers who hasn't really been given a lot of shine. And again, as one of those sickos who watches every single episode of Dark, shout out to Kate, I really liked seeing both of these teams get a little bit of a spot on Dynamite. So, not going to set the world on fire, but just, a good dynamic between the teams, right? The visual difference between them. I like the fact that the Acclaimed didn't technically cheat. They didn't, smash either the Bears with the boombox or grab the tights or anything like that. It just sort of seemed like, they were just being a little bit more crafty, a bit more clever. They just outmaneuvered, some larger, slower opponents. So I like that.
They mentioned that the Acclaimed are the number one ranked tag team at the moment. Let me just kind of double check that. And yeah, that looks to be the case right now, as far as the 2022 rankings go. So it looks like they are being teed up for the Jurassic Express. And the announcers almost kind of tease that the winner of the Friday match might go on to face the Acclaim. But then out comes Sting and Darby Allin. Sting does this slow walk down the ramp with his bat. Meanwhile, Darby charges from the other way, head first into everything, just completely dismantling the Acclaimed. And then, of course, despite all the death-defying moves from Darby Allin, the biggest pop is from the Scorpion Death Drop. So it looks like we're going to get Sting and Darby Allin versus the Acclaimed first.
And it seems not only that, but it's sort of the way the announce team was talking about it, sort of suggesting, Darby and Sting, not just kind of in special one-off tag matches, but as a regular ranked tag team that could possibly have tag team gold, in their sights, which I'll admit this, I was completely wrong about this. I remember, calling into one of the shows and sort of saying, I don't know, this whole Sting thing is going to be overshadowing Darby. He's going to have to break from him. Obviously, we know that Sting won't be able to keep up in the ring with any of these younger competitors. So where is this all going? And Sting has made me completely eat my words. So, as much as, if a year ago you'd said to me, Sting might be in the running for a tag belt, I'd say, this is terrible. This is disastrous. What the hell are you doing? They've shown that, there are ways of working Sting into matches and him being able to hold his own in those matches. So yeah, I'm fine with this match going ahead, and I'm fine if they decide to one day move towards a, Sting and Darby versus, Jurassic Express or whoever it might be.
The scene we saw to close the show last week, of course, had all the tag teams come out to the stage and throughout the arena to essentially kind of, show that they are all in contention now with brand new records and a brand new set of champions. They're all going to be in contention, and they'll all be going after the Jurassic Express's title belts. And already we've got, of course, what is it? The Dark Order here. We've got the Acclaimed, of course, in line. Sting and Darby Allin potentially might be a team. We got the House of Black forming. So, do you think we, throughout the course of these early weeks in the year, early months of the year, are we going to have a number of concurrent tag team storylines going for the Jurassic Express, or do we ultimately focus on one?
I think you could see kind of like a little quick sequence of them, right? We saw with the Dark Order one how relatively straightforward and easy it is for that sort of a match to be set up. I think there is a real conscious interest in trying to sort of give Jungle Boy some more reps in terms of mic work. We all know that that's sort of, if he is going to be one of the four pillars, if he is going to be a main event star in 5 or 7 years or whatever it is, that's something that is, going to need to kind of be leveled up a little bit. So having him, kind of bounce off a number of opponents and possibly having one of them ultimately defeat Jurassic Express in the next 2 or 3 months makes a lot of sense to me. I should also note here, I feel like Marco Stunt is really conspicuous by his absence. He hasn't been seen on Dynamite or Rampage or even Dark, again, as one of those weirdos who watches it all. He hasn't had any matches there, hasn't been coming out with them for a good number of months at this point. So I don't know, just throwing that out there.
Yeah, I believe there's something in the Observer this week about Marco Stunt's contractual status, saying that he is still under contract. But who knows? We are definitely up at the point where a number of those early AEW contracts are up for expiration. So yeah, perhaps we look towards somebody like Marco Stunt's future in the weeks to come. We have a video from Pac. These are all very well done. Anytime we see Pac doing one of these, and of course, last time we saw Pac, he was blinded in both eyes. This time by Malakai's mist. It's a whole video where he talks about now that he's blinded, he sees everything. His perspective is different, and his vision is clear. So seemingly, lining up more contenders for Black and King, or is this something else? What do you think, Bruce?
I think it has to be a singles, kind of grudge match with Black, maybe with the idea being in some sort of, Satoishi, the blind swordsman, or, Ninja Scroll sort of way. Maybe Pac actually tries to wrestle it semi-blind or whatever it might be. I hope we don't have a blindfold match. Those are always terrible.
Maybe he's like Daredevil and his other senses are heightened. Maybe he'll smell his way to the ring.
He's holding up the Justice tarot card, Justice being blind. And all of that. I also really enjoyed, he started this off by speaking, as a hypothetical doctor who is telling him that his vision might never return. And he says, "I'm sorry, Mr. Bastard, your sight may never return." I just love the idea of like surname Bastard on this man's medical records when he walks into a medical examiner's office or whatever it is. Just, yes,
like on the PA calling for him.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Black has a lot of irons in the fire here, right? He has dates with Penta, the Varsity Blondes, and now Pac, apparently.
Yeah. So this is when we get a roll call of everything that's about to come out. So on Rampage on Friday, we've got the 6-woman tag. We've got Spears versus Andrew Everett. We've got a special look at Thunder Rosa versus Mercedes Martinez. And then, of course, we have Jurassic Express versus the Dark Order. Did I miss something else? I feel like I might have missed one.
I feel like they announced a couple of things for Dynamite as well. I was trying to keep up with my notes, and then that just like all ran by incredibly fast. I have no idea what's happening in the next week.
So again, it's a whole, like, tell me, Bruce, because most of the time you watch these shows, you're not taking notes. I imagine tonight was a bit different because you had to take notes, or at least watch close enough to be able to comment on it. Was the experience different for you, and did you prefer, like, is the pace of Dynamite usually an issue for you when you're not taking notes?
I would say 80% of the time I am okay with it, but I do think there are some times when you should have a little bit of breath being given, specifically, to my mind, and I know I'm not the first to say this, specifically after the Paige Danielson match, right? That was such an incredible piece of work from both men, just the visual of both of them covered in blood. This, actual incredibly important moment. Maybe, it almost felt like it was more important than the actual title win, for Hangman Page than the victory over Kenny Omega in some ways. And that's saying something. I just wanted, 20 seconds of just kind of like some panning wide camera shots of this man in the ring, bloodied, but holding the belt, with, one of the greatest pro wrestlers any of us will ever see having to sort of sulk away in defeat. Just let that sit for 20 seconds or something like that, rather than immediately smashing to the next backstage promo.
So on Rampage next week, they have announced the, of course, mixed tag match between Orange Cassidy and Chris Statlander versus Britt Baker and Adam Cole. We've got CM Punk versus Shawn Spears, Serena Deeb versus Sky Blue, the return of Cody Rhodes, and Sting and Darby Allin versus the Acclaimed. So that's happening next week. Matt Hardy is interviewed in the back. He's in a bit of distress after losing his match. He needs something to change. But out comes Andrade, who tells Matt Hardy to focus. Matt Hardy, you're a businessman. We both love money. Let's negotiate a deal. So, it makes me wonder, because I remember last week, it was a line that really got over. I've been loving Andrade, in his English promos these past couple of weeks. He's really kind of honed in on like his voice. Finally, after all this time, and I think it's really working for him. The look is as great as ever. But last week he had a great line about like Sting and Darby Allin and wanting to buy the little kid off of him. No follow up on Sting and Darby Allin from Andrade this week.
Yeah, I'm really wondering if that whole, if the Phoenix injury has really thrown the tag team picture into disarray. Right, it's entirely possible that we might have had Sting and Darby, or just Darby himself getting into something with Andrade, but now Sting and Darby have been pressed into other circumstances there. Am I crazy? Did we not already get some talent exchanges between Andrade and FTR, the Hardy Family Office last year, or am I getting that conflated with MJF?
It might be MJF. Yeah, did he borrow? Like, who would he have borrowed? The Butcher?
Yeah, I feel like he borrowed one or both of Butcher and the Blade from Hardy for one of his matches with Cody or something. I could be wrong, but it feels like something we've seen before. But
either way, you can make a deal with whoever. You can certainly go back and make a deal with the person that you might have made a deal with before, perhaps.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing for me was just that if this is, and it seemed the last image there is of, Private Party being a little bit peeved that, Matt's going to go off and, have a party without them. And, that, they're not being done any party favors, perhaps, by Matt. So again, I'm leaving the stupid puns aside. If this does split, Private Party off from Hardy, I'm fine with that.
In our main event, we have up next for the Interim TNT Championship, Sammy Guevara versus Daniel Garcia. And out to present the title to the winner is David Crockett again.
Third time, I think. Yeah.
Does this man just travel with this belt? Does this belt come with a David Crockett for presentation? Is that what's happening here?
I don't know. Maybe he's just not, the retirement isn't suiting him well. He's not into building model ships or something. And he just has to keep, you can't quit the business. Who knows?
These two are incredibly scrappy to start here. Kingston and Jericho are, of course, ringside. They're yelling at each other. But, it's a very quick, it's a very technical, and I would say very even match between the two. There's some spectacular dives, double jump dives from Sammy Guevara. The GTH is reversed to a sharpshooter. Guevara eventually points to the camera as he hits the crossroads, just sending a bit of a message to the actual TNT champion. It didn't look that clean, but that's okay. We got the idea here. Gets a 2 count for it. Sammy hits another double jump. This time Garcia catches him in a sleeper hold, turns it into a bully choke, and then a pile driver, but Sammy kicks out at 2. I don't know if this was the case on your clock, Bruce, but for me, they certainly went past the 10 o'clock hour here. I don't know if that was the case for other people, or maybe my feed was just a bit late.
I think it was right on the button for me.
Oh, okay. Maybe it was just me then. At this point, 2.0 arrive to ringside. They jump Kingston and Jericho. Garcia, Matt Lee is doing something on the apron, and Garcia is shoved into him, and then it leads right into the GTH as Sammy Guevara retains the Interim TNT Championship. Thoughts on the match?
Obviously got very complex at the end, and obviously the post-match angle, kind of spins out of that. But really, for me, more than anything, this was just a showcase of what an incredible talent, specifically Daniel Garcia, is. If you look at where this guy was a year ago, right? He had a one-off lost to Taylor Rust on NXT. He was in Violence and Suffering cards. When I saw, as much of the Mania weekend indie shows as I watched last year, he and Lee Moriarty were by far and away, the most polished and promising prospects there. This is a main event match in prime time national television for the guy, and it feels absolutely deserved. This was by far and away the best match on the show. Specifically that one sharpshooter that he just really, really cranked on and leaned into, almost even trying to lean over and, grab Sammy's arms with his own arms. That, and then the bully choke into the pile driver were just, these are just kind of fundamental wrestling moves, but they're delivered with just such meanness and grit and grime. He just comes off like somebody who just, fights people because he's angry, fights people because he likes fighting. He just has this very, although he's relatively small in stature, just has this real sort of throwback gritty, even back to the 1950s or something like that, just angry, mean, brutal, sadistic pro wrestling style, while still really clearly communicating, just strong fundamental wrestling work. So yeah, real hats off to Garcia for, I think, really, hitting it out of the park when he needed to.
What did you think of the addition of Dynamite overall?
Overall, until the last match, I felt like this was a very storyline heavy match, rather than in-ring, which is fine. But, as we've been saying at a couple of points over the last hour away, we kept not only seeing, a number of run-ins and interruptions in-ring, but also backstage as well, which can get a little bit confusing, even for, a diehard AEW viewer like myself. Like I said, I'm having difficulty remembering right now, apart from the tag match, what's happening on Dynamite or next week. So, like we were saying, I do feel like the pace here could have been slowed down on the out of ring stuff a little bit. But, I like the fact by the same token that a show like this is one that reminds you that everybody in this show, whether it's, Pac or Kingston all have multiple relationships and complex relationships with a whole range of different people. Nobody here is just, maybe apart from Deeb and Shida, sequestered off into like a locked room with just this one person, and that's all you're going to do for the next 6 months. With Kingston and Malakai Black, you can kind of go anywhere with them. We see a lot of flexibility with the tag picture. This is to kind of bring it back to Crockett. It's kind of classic Crockett NWA booking in that everybody was reminding you of the multiple feuds they might have in promos. And to be frank, something like this is kind of smart when you don't just have injuries like we saw last week, but also the possibility of, COVID, just taking 1 or 2 or 3 of your major competitors out and having to sort of rebook on the fly. Having everybody sort of spinning multiple plates simultaneously is maybe smart in the long run, even if it does occasionally make a show like this one feel a little bit cramped and rushed at times.
Yeah, I do think there's a very delicate balance between, making perhaps your world feel realistic and having more than one particular opponent focused on you at the same time, at one time, and managing to be able to create a very clear narrative for your audience to follow. And I just wonder if, like, in particular, I think AEW does really well with its main programs. Like when it's CM Punk versus Wardlow, or CM Punk versus MJF. I mean, it's very clear. Like, what's happening. Every single match feels like it's leading towards one particular direction, and it's great. Even when it comes to, what is this now? And the best friends versus the super elite, it's very clear what's going on there. But then, like, when you're trying to get off, trying to start off like a Malakai Black and Brody King thing, I thought it got to be a little bit much towards the end when you start piling in, a Penta program along with a Pac program on top of it. And I think, maybe when you're starting off, it's going to feel a bit messy and a bit looser with so many pieces that you're trying to, put together. But for me, maybe it's the lack of star power that doesn't put some of these names in the forefront as much as the CM Punk versus MJF. But I do feel like this is a show that could use maybe a bit more clarity. We also have Statlander doing something with Layla Hirsch at the same time as she's doing something with Britt Baker, and maybe it'll all tie together eventually. But like you're saying, Bruce, maybe certain audiences that are watching these shows don't mind all that at all. So it's going to be a bit different. I thought overall this edition of Dynamite was pretty average, pretty mediocre. I thought it moved some pieces along, some decent wrestling, but not necessarily anything that I think was as standout as some of the previous weeks. But of course, the main event, yes, I agree with you, was very good. Let's go to the feedback here. Forum.postwrestling.com. And would you like to read with me, Bruce? Or
yeah,
would you...
absolutely. Yeah.
Perfect. So let's go back and forth here. I'm going to start here with Johnny Sanchez, who says, this was a pretty average Dynamite, which isn't a bad thing. Not every episode should be big matches, and this felt like a nice beginning for new feuds. The tag division felt like the big focus, with multiple backstage and post-match focuses on several teams, from FTR, Red Dragon, Dark Order, and the fresh House of Black. I've been waiting for weeks for Brody King to arrive, and he's finally here. I have to give TK credit. To have a show where you can confidently book 2 young talents that were built primarily in your promotion to main event is commendable. Must make booking easier to know that any combination can be a viable main event. I've also noticed more video packages in the TBS era so far. Do you think the change of station could have offered an opportunity to change Dynamite's structure? Did you feel that way, Bruce?
I did. There were the number of video packages, and again, some of them were really good, right? The Pac one, I liked the, the Wardlow as Maestro one. I never thought I'd think of Wardlow and, Herbert Von Karajan in the same sentence. I like those little things, but again, if it's just a case of, I think there's a difference between those sorts of vignettes and just backstage promo, interruption of backstage promo, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I haven't noticed much in the way of like conscious aesthetic change in terms of like, the opening video package or, the ring or the lights or graphics or anything like that. I haven't really noticed anything there. I would hope that there wouldn't be a conscious decision to do more backstage or non-in-ring stuff because of the network change, but I'm not really in on the very subtle differences between TBS and TNT.
Yeah, it's hard for me to think that there would be any sort of difference just simply because of them changing stations, owned by the same company. I really haven't noticed too much, like we do know, of course, like Keith Mitchell was no longer part of the broadcast, like he ended last year, but that to me hasn't seemed to make any sort of difference in the
Mhm.
production.
Mhm. We go now to Muggin, who says the theme of loyalty ran rampant throughout tonight's Dynamite. The Cole Red Dragon Bucks tension got cranked up. Wardlow MJF is getting increasingly strained because of the former's growing independence, and the inner circle is caught in the middle of two Type A's in Jericho and Kingston. Yes, Brody King made a strong debut, and it was the most noteworthy thing to come out of this show. Deep Shida was more of an angle than a match. I think a lights out match needs to be the outcome. Yeah, Punk did his best to get Wardlow over, and that tease of Wardlow turning on MJF was so sweet. Is it me, or does Punk have to jump through the hoops to get to Friedman, almost similar to the labors of Jericho last year? Yeah, I think we had somebody in the chat mention the 5 labors of Punk earlier on. It very much feels that way right now, Way.
Yeah, exactly. We got a Jay from Colorado who says, as JR said at one point in the broadcast, this show has something for everyone. As usual, I was completely entertained from the beginning of the show to the end. While not every segment landed completely, I can appreciate them trying new things without shoving them down our throats. Stories are progressed thoughtfully, characters are built in a meaningful way, and I'm given a reason to watch next Friday and next week. TK knows how to hook an audience, no pun intended. I can't say how much I appreciate a wrestling product that doesn't waste my time nor intelligence. Quick question. When the eventual Bucks versus Undisputed Era feud takes place, do you see that as the catalyst for Kenny Omega's return to feud with Adam Cole? Absolutely. Yes. I think that would be wonderful. That would be a dream feud.
Kenny's got no short, a very long line of dance partners whenever he does come back. But yeah, Cole has to be, unless we're getting some sort of, crazy thing, with crossover with New Japan or whatever. I have to think the Cole match is going to be very, very high on that list. Brian is up next, who says, I thought the matches overall were fine, but what really got me excited was the build for the future. The eventual collision between the Young Bucks and Red Dragon with Adam Cole stuck in the middle, or is he? Wardlow about to go nuclear in the middle of the MJF Punk feud. Brody King joining Malakai Black. Lance Archer is an unexpected new challenger for Adam Page. I'm liking the Jericho Kingston turmoil more than I thought. Staying in the present, I thought it was very cool to see Dr. Baker join her Bebe in the ring and mixed up with his crew. I wish Shida and Deeb had a more complete match, but I thought Deeb was fantastic in her actions. Thought the main event was strong outside of the clunky GTH. Yeah, last little GTH was a bit sloppy, but we'll give him a pass.
Adam from the street says, it looks like MJF is doing the 5 labors of Punk. Should MJF make some calls to get Mike Jackson and Mickey Gall, who are, of course, his 2 UFC opponents, as well as check in on Dark Order's Boom Boom Colt Cabana? I thought MJF was going to announce Colt tonight. Should Cabana and Punk main event Chicago in February? No, I don't think so.
That's I don't know about that one.
Yeah, who knows? Like backstage, what those two are dealing with, and it's like, I wouldn't want them to, I would certainly hope that they can get their personal issues set aside before we see anything on screen between the two of them for our entertainment.
Yeah, there's been one brief mention of it in a Dark Order skit on being the Elite, but that's it. I mean, hell, if we're going down that road, what about CM Venom? What's he up to?
I would even argue that, like, if MJF announced Colt Cabana versus Punk, like that kind of MJF versus Punk is definitely the feud. But if there's a match out there that like make the audience actually more interested, it might be CM Punk versus Colt Cabana. So, and that's not the point of the gimmick. The point of the gimmick is to continually disappoint you, so you don't see MJF versus Punk.
Yeah. MJ from NJ says, on Archer, what a great person to have on a roster who you can always reset as a monster heel for a babyface champion to conquer. This is a great example of utilizing talent to their strengths and how protecting them can maximize value of a roster spot. He's lost 3 or 4 title matches in AEW, I believe, but he's still a great opponent to feed a champion. Testament to performer and boomer, or Booker, I'm assuming he means. Excited to see him back. Yeah, very much in line with my thoughts.
We get a Vic who says, was attendance for the show bad? The crowd lighting looked unusually dark this episode. I haven't looked up the attendance, but I can check that.
It did look darker than usual. The second and third levels looked. I was wondering the same thing.
Vic says having the Wardlow and Hobbs matches back to back was a bad idea as the scenarios were similar. Yeah, we pointed that out too. Where's Lio Rush? Him and Dante have had a great tag match, and then he just disappeared. At least they found Jay Lethal. Brody King is an awesome big man. Hopefully he doesn't get lost in the shuffle with Pac and Archer coming back and a ton of free agents out there. I hope they can find time with everyone. Rampage this week looks completely missable, but hopefully they surprise us.
Lastly, we go to Pete Forsberg, who says Adam Cole needs to lift some weights. 6 foot tall, 200 pounds, built my ass. Great in-ring, good on the mic, but does look presentation not matter? People compare him to Shawn Michaels, but Michaels was taller and way more jacked and ripped. Cole is skinny fat with T-Rex arms. Ouch. Love your guys' work. It's never been an issue for me with Cole. I mean, sure, he could be a little bit more physically imposing, but I find the persona that he has and the in-ring style that he works, which is this very, endurance based and very kind of like crafty and wily based. And, in addition to his technical acumen, that works for him, right? Like, as somebody who just watched every single G1 match, I can tell you that barely anyone was more impressive in that whole tournament than, just skinny noodle man Zack Sabre Jr. And he seemed entirely credible the whole way through because of the in-ring style he works. This isn't to say that looks, in my opinion, at least, that, looks don't matter or don't have a place in pro wrestling. They definitely do. It's an aesthetically driven industry. But I feel as though as long as you have a wrestling style and your matches are presented in such a way that seems semi-credible in comportment with your style and appearance, I don't have any problem with it.
Yeah, I'm totally the same. Especially when you're talking about an audience like AEW's who, this whole, to me, independent pro wrestling revolution has been based off of cruiserweight sized men. And for that matter, Adam Cole found plenty of success as a main eventer, even within the much, criticized WWE that has always, applauded the big man. Like a Cole versus Johnny Gargano to me did not seem at all out of place as a main event on a takeover. And I don't think that'll be the case on a AEW, All Out or whatever future pay-per-view that they do either. This is an audience that I think, certainly values in-ring ability. And more importantly, I think microphone ability. And we know Adam Cole can make himself sound like a giant. So I'm not personally bothered or concerned about it at all.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got just from WrestleTix here, AEW Dynamite. Just a bunch of sections were taken off the map today. Okay, so last check as of 1 day ago, this said 4,739 tickets distributed. I don't have a tally of the total, but that sounds pretty decent to me, actually. So here, okay, so current setup for 7,000. Okay, so and they had about 4,700 distributed, which is about 66%. So maybe a little bit softer, but I don't think it's that out of line from the norm, from my what I could tell.
They have also been in North Carolina for a while now. I think this is the third show consecutively in the state, something like that. Maybe, I don't know. I could be wrong.
All right, that kind of wraps it up for this edition of our Dynamite review. Thank you so much, Bruce, for lending so much great insight. You're a joy to speak to anytime we need you. So hope to do more of these. Where can people find more of you and your work from the past weekend?
As we were talking about right off of the top, you can look forward to a new episode of Postmarks dropping this Saturday, in which myself and David Myers spoke with MJ from NJ. Had a really great conversation with him, really eager for folks to be able to check that out. I've done a little bit of writing recently over at Post as well. I had a write-up of the Battle for the Belts show. I think my thoughts were more or less simpatico with yours and John's, but I have a written report of that up on the website. Besides that, I hope I remain a relatively light follow on Twitter at Contrasoma. That's CONTRASOMA. It's also the same username on Grapple if you want to see what sort of ratings I give to every single dark match. Hell, it's the same username on things like Untapped and Last FM as well, if you're interested in what I think of beer or what music I've been listening to. Also, speaking of music, I should give a quick plug for my kind of regular online gig, which is idieudie.com. It's a website and podcast that I run with my good buddy Alex, in which we write about and talk about industrial industrial music, goth music, EBM, and darkwave. And we have a Technical weekly podcast dealing with those sorts of genres. So a little bit on the niche side, but I do know that there are a good number of Post listeners who are into that sort of thing, and many of whom have gotten in touch with me, and that's wonderful. So on the off chance that you haven't checked it out and that is your cup of tea, idieudie.com.
And thank you very much, Alex, for sharing Bruce with us, because this is your usual recording time for that podcast. Yeah. So we very much appreciate it. Thank you very much, Bruce, for joining us. And thank you, everybody in the Zoom chat, all you Double Plus patrons for joining us. Tomorrow, as I mentioned, it's the MMA prediction show with Ariel Helwani and John Pollock that airs 1 o'clock on the YouTube and will be available on the free feed at about that same time, too. Got the British Wrestling Experience coming up. And then on Friday, it's the worst of. If you want to tune in live, that'll be Thursday night, 8 p.m. Eastern time at youtube.com/postwrestling. Otherwise, get that on Friday. So that's it for the plugs. You can go back to the front of the show if you want to hear more. And that's it for me until Friday. So until then, guys, talk to you later.